I found the crown of France in the gutter and placed it atop my own head.
Napoleon Bonaparte's army is notable not just for its strategic skill, but also for some unusual practices considered normal at the time. From mysterious battlefield etiquette to unprecedented medical practices, his forces embraced a variety of abnormalities that marked a period of both military excellence and unconventional behavior. Join us as we unravel the crazy things that were normal for Napoleon's army. A cult of loyalty and unquestioning devotion. Napoleon Bonaparte stands out as a highly successful military commander, comparable to historical figures such as Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan. His remarkable battlefield achievements include winning an impressive 90% of the battles he engaged in. The loyalty of his soldiers was unwavering, as they followed him without hesitation, even in situations where their lives were at stake. His troops held him in high regard, almost like a revered figure. Yet it's important to note that he didn't revolutionize the art of warfare. Instead, he excelled at it. His intense focus, persistence, and fervent desire to establish France as the dominant power in the 19th century were unparalleled. Napoleon capitalized on the momentum of a revolution that had reshaped notions of patriotism during his time. Before the revolution, the French army was led by nobles and aristocrats who attained high ranks based solely on their family background. However, in Napoleon's French army, officers earned their positions through merit and heroic deeds on the battlefield. This shift occurred as a response to the 97% vacancies created after the French Revolution. He rewarded bravery, skill, and strategic thinking, making soldiers eager for his recognition. Napoleon's hands-on approach distinguished him, and every soldier in his army felt valued. This personalized attention fostered a reciprocal sense of significance for him among the troops. The promotion system was not solely based on merit. His micromanagement and personal reasons for selecting top-ranking officers eventually played a significant role in his downfall. During a routine inspection, he once asked the inspection general to identify the bravest man in the army. The chosen soldier was called forward, and Napoleon, in a grand gesture, removed the Legion of Honor medal from his coat and pinned it on the soldier. This must have been a significant moment for these soldiers, many of whom hailed from humble backgrounds, receiving the highest honor from the man who was likely their hero. In the Battle of Arles in 1796 during the Italian campaign, the French army division known as the Army of Italy faced intense bombardment from Austrian troops, making crossing an important bridge nearly impossible. Napoleon, demonstrating exceptional leadership, seized a tricolor flag of France, walked in front of his soldiers with a sword in hand, and encouraged them into a charge. He reminded them of their connection to the French Republic, facing firing cannons himself. The soldiers, inspired by his bravado, swiftly followed, resulting in a glorious victory. His ability to rally his soldiers through words and actions was a recurring theme in the name of France. Similar to Alexander of Macedonia, he believed in leading by example. He often shared hardships with his troops, eating, sleeping, and enduring difficulties in camps alongside them. He conveyed the message that if he could rise through the ranks to become their supreme leader, they could achieve greatness as well. This approach, both in words and deeds, contributed to his soldiers' unwavering loyalty and belief in their shared potential for success. During the Egyptian campaign, as French troops started feeling homesick, Napoleon took a unique approach to boost morale. He ordered the planting of full-grown palm trees around their camp to create a Mediterranean atmosphere, helping the soldiers feel more at home. Additionally, his decision to send scholars to explore ancient Egyptian history was partly driven by the desire to provide entertainment for his troops. This initiative aimed to give them places to visit, things to look at, and stories to share around the campfire. His leadership style resonated with soldiers who came from regions that hadn't been actively involved in battles. He ruled in a relatable manner, like a common man, and this endeared him to the troops. Consequently, they followed him unquestioningly into numerous conflicts, viewing him almost as a revered figure. By the spring of 1812, Napoleon's charisma had gathered a formidable army of 600,000 men from various corners of his empire. This force included not only French, but also German, Polish, and Italian soldiers, all willing to follow him with unwavering dedication. The loyalty he inspired was so strong that it could be likened to a cult or sect, with the troops practically worshipping him. Logistical challenges and starving soldiers. Despite receiving a tutorial in Egypt on the importance of managing the army's water needs, Napoleon failed to apply the lesson. A year later, upon reaching Cairo, the Grand Army was tasked with a 10-day march to Syria without sufficient food or water, reminiscent of a David Goggins-style challenge. The water they had was also of questionable quality, with a sergeant noting that it was not only hot and unpleasant, but also as dirty as if it had been filled at a cobbler's tub where goat skins were made. Speaking of discomfort, the shoes distributed by the army were made of tough cowhide, weighing 611 grams each. They came in only 3 sizes, often forcing soldiers to march long distances in shoes that were either too floppy, too large, or uncomfortably tight. To add to the discomfort, these shoes were not designed separately for the left or right feet. All of them had the same shape with square toes that would painfully bite into the soldiers' toe tips with every arduous step. The uniforms were in poor condition, loosely fitted, shabby, and heavy. They were not suitable for the harsh climates the soldiers had to endure while marching and fighting. Despite the emphasis on good equipment in speeches, military supplies in Paris were consistently awarded to the cheapest bidders, disregarding quality. Upon arriving in Syria after a challenging journey, the Grand Army faced rampant infectious diseases, leading to Napoleon's first taste of defeat at the Fortress of Air. The siege resulted in 2,300 casualties, with an equal number of soldiers being wounded or severely ill. During this time, war medical services were subpar. There was limited understanding of hygiene, no antibiotics, and few options for treating wounded limbs, often resorting to amputations without anesthesia. Medics faced challenges such as using blunt saws and prolonging the already agonizing procedures. Despite the hardships, soldiers bravely faced battles, knowing that injury on the battlefield meant enduring prolonged agony until eventual demise. Napoleon led the French armies through 81 battles across Europe, from Russia and the Middle East to Africa. While we understand why over 600,000 men followed him in these perilous campaigns, let's delve into the living conditions in Napoleon's military camps, particularly in Russia, which highlights the challenges of his strategies and tactics. Despite a quote often attributed to him about the importance of an army's stomach, emphasizing the need to feed his troops well, the reality was quite different. Although not meant to be taken, Napoleon's army, comprised mainly of above-average height Frenchmen, faced significant hardships. However, he did not adequately prepare for the logistical challenge of feeding such a large army. His micromanagement and single-minded focus on war left little room for preparations, including food supplies. Rations were not a priority, and his fixation on control hindered others from addressing this essential need. The Grand Army soldiers had a fixed menu for every meal: soup, boiled beef, a roasted joint, and some vegetables, no dessert or beverages. Culinary and beverage resources were primarily reserved for medicinal purposes. Given the constant movement of the army and the challenges of 19th century logistics, with poor roads and unpredictable weather, supply wagons often failed to reach campsites on time. Consequently, the Grand Army had to resort to foraging off the land or plundering nearby villages to sustain themselves. This tactic, employed during the Italian campaign, contributed to the legendary status of the then 27-year-old Napoleon Bonaparte. Even in challenging situations when he led his army, the scarcity of food became a source of humor. Napoleon's valet, Louis Constant Wary, recounted in his memoirs that during the conflict with the Russians in Poland, the soldiers learned a bit of Polish. The phrase "chleba nie ma," meaning bread, there's none, became a joke among them. He caught wind of this linguistic jest. One day, as he passed by their camp, a soldier taunted him with the cry, "Papa chleba!" Napoleon, showing a rare smile, replied softly with a simple "Ima." The entire column erupted in laughter at the lighthearted exchange. The Bicorn Hat and the iconic image of Napoleon's army. One iconic aspect of Napoleon's army was the distinctive bicorn hat worn by its soldiers. This unique headgear, characterized by its two-pointed design, served both symbolic and practical purposes, becoming a symbol of identity for the French military during the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The Bicorn Hat, named for its dual peaks, featured a wide brim that sloped down on the front and back, creating a distinct profile. This design was not merely a stylistic choice, but had practical advantages on the battlefield. The hat's shape allowed rainwater to easily run off, providing some protection against the elements. This was particularly crucial for soldiers who often faced varying weather conditions during campaigns. Beyond its utilitarian function, the Bicorn Hat played a vital role in fostering a sense of unity and identity among Napoleon's troops. Uniforms, including the iconic headgear, were essential elements of military discipline and cohesion. The bicorn became a recognizable emblem of the French military, contributing to a shared identity among soldiers in the Grand Army. Officers, in particular, adorned their bicorn hats with distinctive plumes, braids, and other embellishments to signify rank and status. This practice reinforced the hierarchical structure within the army and allowed for easy identification of leadership on the battlefield. The bicorn hat's prominence extended beyond the military sphere, influencing fashion trends of the time. Its widespread adoption in civilian life highlighted the broader cultural impact of Napoleon's army on European society. Another defining feature of Napoleon's military strategy was the utilization of column formations, a methodical approach to troop movement on the battlefield. This strategy, known for its agility and adaptability, played a crucial role in the success of the French army. The column formation was characterized by soldiers marching closely together in long, linear arrangements. This configuration facilitated rapid mobilization and swift maneuvering, allowing Napoleon's forces to cover extensive distances with relative ease. The soldiers, organized in tightly packed columns, could quickly transition into various battle formations, responding promptly to changing circumstances on the battlefield. The primary advantage of the column formation lies in its speed and flexibility. During campaigns, the ability to move swiftly was paramount for Napoleon's army, enabling surprise attacks and strategic positioning. However, this tactic also had its drawbacks. The densely packed columns were vulnerable to artillery fire, presenting a challenge in the face of well-placed enemy cannons. To mitigate this risk, Napoleon often relied on the speed and surprise element of his attacks, seeking to engage the enemy before they could effectively deploy their artillery. The column formation's adaptability was particularly evident in the famous battle tactics employed by Napoleon, such as the oblique order and the use of the corps d'armée. The oblique order involved concentrating forces at a specific point on the enemy's line, creating a focal point of attack and overwhelming the opponent. Meanwhile, the corps d'armée represented a modular approach to warfare, with self-sufficient units capable of independent action within the larger formation. Foraging was a crucial aspect of Napoleon's military strategy, playing a significant role in sustaining his army during campaigns. This practice involved soldiers obtaining provisions directly from the local environment, often leading to a complex interaction between the military and civilian populations. Napoleon's armies, known for their swift movements and extensive campaigns, required a constant and reliable supply of food and resources. Traditional supply lines were often insufficient, prompting reliance on foraging to meet the demands of the troops. Soldiers were authorized to requisition food, livestock, and other necessities from the territories they occupied, aiming to ensure the sustenance and mobility of the army. However, the implementation of foraging had profound implications for the civilian populations in the affected regions. While the practice aimed at easing logistical challenges for the military, it often resulted in tensions and hardships for local communities. The requisitioning of goods by the army could lead to food shortages, economic strain, and resentment among civilians. The foraging system varied in its impact, with some regions experiencing more severe consequences than others. Areas subjected to prolonged military presence faced the depletion of resources, disrupting normal life for inhabitants. The challenge lay in finding a balance between meeting the army's needs and mitigating the adverse effects on civilian communities. Moreover, foraging blurred the lines between the military and civilian spheres. The army's reliance on local resources meant that civilians became unintentional participants in the military effort. This created a dynamic where the fate of civilians was intricately tied to the movements and success of the army. Napoleon's army, while formidable in its military prowess, was not immune to the challenges posed by the logistics of sustaining a large and mobile force. The foraging practices of the time were pragmatic solutions to the practicalities of warfare, but underscored the interconnectedness of military and civilian life during this period. How mule trains fueled Napoleon's blitzkrieg warfare. Napoleon's army, renowned for its strategic brilliance, employed innovative logistical approaches during campaigns, notably the utilization of mule trains for supply transport. This method, integral to the army's success, contributed to the mobility and efficiency of Napoleon's forces. The decision to use mule trains over traditional wagons was rooted in practical considerations. Mules, known for their endurance, adaptability to rugged terrain, and ability to carry substantial loads, offered advantages in challenging environments where conventional transport methods faltered. Unlike wheeled vehicles, mules could traverse uneven landscapes with greater ease, making them invaluable in the diverse terrains encountered during military campaigns. These mule trains played a crucial role in ensuring a constant supply of provisions for the army. Loaded with food, ammunition, equipment, and other essentials, the mules accompanied the troops as they advanced. The use of mules allowed the army to maintain a more rapid and flexible pace, essential for Napoleon's swift and dynamic style of warfare. Additionally, mule trains offered logistical advantages in terms of adaptability and resilience. In the face of changing battlefield conditions or unexpected obstacles, the army could quickly adjust its supply routes and maintain a steady flow of resources. This adaptability was particularly significant given the unpredictability of wartime logistics and the need to sustain the army over extended distances. The reliance on mule trains reflected a pragmatic understanding of the logistical challenges inherent in military campaigns. By prioritizing mobility and adaptability, Napoleon's army could navigate diverse terrains, execute rapid maneuvers, and sustain itself over prolonged periods. This logistical innovation contributed to the success of Napoleon's military campaigns, allowing his forces to outmaneuver adversaries and secure victories. Also, Semaphor Communication, an ingenious visual signaling system, played a crucial role in Napoleon's army. This method utilized semaphore flags, enabling long-distance communication through a series of distinct flag positions and movements. Semaphore systems were pivotal for relaying messages swiftly and efficiently across varying terrains, providing the army with a reliable means of strategic coordination. The semaphore flags consisted of various positions, each representing a specific letter or numeral. Semaphore operators stationed on elevated points, such as hills or watchtowers, would manipulate these flags to convey messages to distant locations. The visual nature of semaphore allowed for rapid communication without the need for audible signals, making it ideal for maintaining secrecy and preventing interception by enemy forces. In practical terms, a trained operator could transmit complex messages by rapidly changing the flag positions. The semaphore codebook provided a standardized set of instructions, ensuring that messages were accurately decoded on the receiving end. This system facilitated real-time communication between different units of Napoleon's army, aiding in coordination during battles, troop movements, and strategic planning. The efficiency of semaphore communication was particularly advantageous in the fluid and fast-paced nature of Napoleon's military campaigns. The ability to transmit orders swiftly across vast distances contributed to the Grand Army's agility and adaptability on the battlefield. It allowed commanders to respond promptly to changing circumstances and maintain a cohesive and well-coordinated force. However, Semaphor communication also had its limitations. Weather conditions, such as heavy fog or rain, could impede visibility, rendering the system less effective. Additionally, the need for line-of-sight communication meant that semaphore was most effective in relatively open terrains. Despite its limitations, the semaphore was a cutting-edge technology of its time, showcasing the innovative approaches employed by Napoleon's army. The use of visual signals not only reflected the military pragmatism of the era, but also highlighted the importance of swift and secure communication in the success of military campaigns. Weird medical practices. In the early 19th century, the medical practices of Napoleon's army were marked by a stark contrast to modern standards. One particularly noteworthy and grim aspect was the prevalence of amputations on the battlefield. Amid the Napoleonic Wars, when medical knowledge was limited and battlefield conditions were harsh, amputation emerged as a common and necessary procedure for treating limb injuries sustained during combat. The primary reason for this widespread practice was the urgent need to address injuries quickly and prevent the spread of infection. Without the luxury of advanced medical facilities or antibiotics, the removal of a wounded soldier's limb was often the most expedient means of saving lives. The procedure was typically performed under dire circumstances, with little consideration for pain management. Anesthesia was not widely available, and the priority was to execute the amputation swiftly to minimize the agony experienced by the injured soldier. This lack of pain relief undoubtedly added to the physical and psychological trauma endured by those undergoing the procedure. The instruments used in these amputations were basic and crude by modern standards. Surgeons wielded saws and knives, with little regard for the sterile conditions we associate with surgical procedures today. The urgency of the battlefield demanded speed over precision, and as a result, the surgical outcomes varied widely. Infections, gangrene, and complications were common, and the survival rates for those undergoing amputation were far from ideal. Despite the grim nature of these medical practices, amputation in Napoleon's army was seen as a necessary and pragmatic response to the exigencies of war. The prevalence of musket balls and cannon fire on the battlefield meant that limb injuries were frequent, and quick decision-making was imperative to save lives. Surgeons in the army were tasked with mastering the art of rapid, life-saving interventions in austere conditions. That's not all. Discipline played a crucial role in maintaining order within the army. One distinctive method of enforcing discipline was the practice of flogging, a form of corporal punishment meted out for various disciplinary offenses. In the rigid hierarchical structure of the army, maintaining control over the troops was imperative for effective military operations. Flogging, the act of administering lashes with a whip or similar instrument, became a standard disciplinary measure. This punitive approach was intended to serve as a deterrent, instilling fear among the soldiers and deterring them from engaging in behaviors deemed detrimental to the unit's cohesion and effectiveness. The offenses that warranted flogging varied, but often included insubordination, desertion, theft, or any act considered prejudicial to the discipline and morale of the troops. The severity of the punishment depended on the gravity of the offense, with soldiers facing a predetermined number of lashes administered publicly as a deterrent to others. The whipping was typically carried out ceremonially, with the offender tied to a post or another fixed object. A designated individual, often a non-commissioned officer, would then administer the lashes. The number of lashes could range from a few dozen to several hundred, and the severity of the punishment often left soldiers physically and emotionally scarred. The underlying philosophy behind flogging was rooted in the belief that the threat of physical pain would deter soldiers from engaging in misconduct. This approach, while effective in some cases, also raised ethical concerns and faced criticism, even during its time. Critics argued that such harsh measures could undermine morale and breed resentment among the ranks. Despite the controversial nature of flogging, it persisted in military discipline for centuries, reflecting the prevailing attitudes toward maintaining order and control in the armed forces. Over time, as societal norms evolved, there was a gradual shift away from such severe forms of corporal punishment. Ultimately, the use of flogging in Napoleon's army serves as a historical example of the complexities and challenges inherent in maintaining discipline within a large and diverse military organization. The diverse composition of Napoleon's Grand Army. Napoleon's Grand Army was characterized by its diverse composition, as soldiers hailed from various European nations. This multinational approach to forming the army was driven by strategic, political, and logistical considerations. The diverse troops in his army were drawn from countries he either conquered or allied with through treaties. This composition had both advantages and challenges. On the positive side, it allowed Napoleon to field a massive and versatile force, incorporating a range of skills, experiences, and tactics. The inclusion of soldiers from different regions enriched the army's capabilities, making it a formidable and adaptable fighting force. However, the multinational nature of the army also posed significant challenges. Language barriers were a constant issue, as soldiers from different countries spoke varied languages and dialects. To address this, the army often relied on interpreters and standardized military commands. The diversity in cultural backgrounds also led to differences in customs, traditions, and military practices, requiring a cohesive command structure to ensure effective communication and coordination on the battlefield. The multinational composition was a double-edged sword in terms of loyalty and morale. While soldiers from conquered territories might have initially been reluctant or resentful, Napoleon often employed strategic measures to foster a sense of unity and allegiance. The promise of shared victories, the potential for promotions, and the establishment of a code of conduct aimed to create a cohesive fighting force despite the diversity of its members. Logistically, managing the supply and provisioning needs of a multinational army presented substantial challenges. Different regions had varying climates, which affected the soldiers' adaptability to different environments. Moreover, securing provisions and foraging became complex, as the army needed to navigate through territories with distinct agricultural practices and available resources. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Among the crazy things that were normal for Napoleon's army was the sanctioned practice of looting and pillaging in conquered territories. This strategy, though unconventional by today's standards, was an integral part of the army's operational dynamics. As he expanded his empire through military conquests, the issue of sustaining his forces in unfamiliar and often hostile territories became paramount. To address this challenge, soldiers were permitted to engage in looting as a form of reward for their service. This system, while motivating the troops, had profound implications for both the army and the occupied populations. Upon capturing a city or town, Napoleon's soldiers were allowed to seize and appropriate valuables, supplies, and resources from the local populace. This included not only food and provisions, but also personal property. The rationale behind this policy was to ensure the self-sufficiency of the army, as it reduced the need for a complex and vulnerable supply chain. However, the widespread implementation of looting led to significant social and economic repercussions. Local civilians suffered from the loss of property, disruption of daily life, and, in many cases, financial ruin. The practice created a tense relationship between the occupying forces and the occupied populations, often fostering animosity and resistance. While looting was officially condoned, it was not without challenges. Maintaining discipline within the ranks proved difficult, as unchecked looting could escalate into uncontrollable chaos. Additionally, the negative impact on civilian morale in occupied territories sometimes led to increased resistance against Napoleon's rule. Let us know what you think in the comments below. The dark side of addiction in Napoleon's army. Napoleon's military success was significantly influenced by his innovative use of rapid and aggressive tactics, akin to what is now known as Blitzkrieg tactics. This approach, characterized by swift and overwhelming offensives, played a crucial role in the success of Napoleon's campaigns. The term Blitzkrieg, meaning lightning war in German, gained prominence during World War II, but the principles behind it were evident in his strategies. Instead of relying on traditional slow-moving infantry and static defenses, Napoleon focused on the mobility of his forces to achieve quick victories. One key element of his Blitzkrieg tactics was the effective use of combined arms. He integrated infantry, cavalry, and artillery into a cohesive and synchronized force, allowing for rapid advances and flexible responses to changing battlefield conditions. The infantry provided stability and firepower, while the cavalry added speed and maneuverability. Artillery played a crucial role in softening enemy positions and supporting the overall offensive. The speed of his campaigns was facilitated by the strategic use of logistics and a streamlined command structure. His forces were well supplied, thanks in part to the use of mule trains and the ability to forage for resources in the territories he conquered. Additionally, he maintained clear communication lines, employing innovative methods like the semaphore system to relay messages rapidly across vast distances. Napoleon's ability to maintain the momentum of his campaigns was another hallmark of his blitzkrieg tactics. After achieving a victory, he would swiftly move his forces to exploit weaknesses in the enemy's defenses or to confront new threats. This constant pressure on the opponent prevented them from regrouping and mounting an effective counteroffensive. Additionally, his military campaigns were characterized by a strategic focus on key objectives. Rather than engaging in prolonged sieges or battles of attrition, he sought decisive victories that would force the enemy to capitulate swiftly. This approach allowed him to achieve remarkable success in a series of rapid and well-executed maneuvers. Here's the intriguing aspect. The success of Napoleon's army often hinged on sacrificing certain comforts to maintain its swift pace. During a 3-day march from Alexandria to Cairo, the soldiers faced challenges such as marching without water canteens on scorching sands, wearing thick European armor, and carrying heavy equipment. To avoid delays, soldiers had to forego filling their canteens, and some even discarded their hard biscuits, hoping to forage like they did in Italy. Unfortunately, this decision proved fatal for many. Some perished from thirst, others starved, and some succumbed to the intense heat, ending their own lives upon reaching the Nile. He leveraged the fanaticism of his soldiers for their leader to inspire them to continue waging war, despite the pressing need for survival. The situation in Russia was even more dire, as the harsh cold claimed more lives in the Grand Army than hunger did. In temperatures as low as -20 degrees Celsius, desperate men resorted to eating horseflesh, often seasoned with gunpowder. There's a debate about Napoleon's diet in Russia. While he claimed to eat no differently than ordinary soldiers, French historian André Castello contradicts this, stating that Napoleon enjoyed a daily repast of white bread, chamba beef or mutton, and rice with beans or lentils. This contrasted sharply with the soldiers who were dying of starvation, highlighting a stark disparity in their living conditions. As the demand for hashish surged among soldiers due to the increasing brutality of wars and carnage, his quest for a larger empire showed no bounds. The troops, engrossed in enjoying Arabian grass, became challenging to control for Napoleon, as their addiction surpassed their devotion to him. The revelation of the real reason behind his downfall is not attributed to hashish. Instead, it stems from the shattering of the mirage of his charisma. His insatiable hunger for conquest pushed the soldiers into continuous battles, and he struggled to manage it alone. Hashish served as an escape for soldiers who, in turn, started deserting or seeking discharge for medical reasons. The replacements lacked proper training and indoctrination, as leadership positions were filled based on loyalty to him rather than merit. Additionally, yes-men surrounded Napoleon, serving as incompetent leaders who failed to inspire recruits or retain seasoned veterans. The breaking point came in Russia, leading to Waterloo becoming an inevitable event. His hands-on approach, while initially successful, ultimately spiraled out of control, contributing to his downfall. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.